In competitive shooter games like Apex Legends, serious players often use any technique and tool necessary to get an advantage. The best players make the most of the game's dynamic movement to slip and slide away from their enemies' crosshairs during firefights. One movement technique that continues to polarize the Apex Legends community is Tap-Strafing, which lets players do a fast hairpin turn while air strafing. This mechanic shows the complicated relationship between difficult techniques and competitive multiplayer games. Entertainment and Electronic Arts on February 4, 2019, to much fanfare. Being a spin-off of the Titanfall franchise, it only made sense for Apex to also feature the series' excellent movement mechanics. How well players can bunny hop, air strafe, tap strafe, and wall jump is just as important as their ability to aim. All of these mechanics can be done with a mouse and keyboard and to some extent, a controller. However, some players who find such movement techniques difficult may resort to macros to execute them, which is a hot-button topic in the community. How tap-strafing in Apex Legends works. To those unfamiliar with the maneuver, tap-strafing involves slide jumping, air strafing, and using the move forward input and mouse to do a 180 turn. Players can utilize this technique in various situations, like blazing through corners to quickly shake off enemies. They can also chain a tap-strafe into a wall jump to juke an opponent and then follow up with a shotgun blast up close. A common way to tap-strafe in Apex Legends is to bind the forward movement key onto the mouse's wheel. This way, players can consistently trigger it while they're air strafing. The technique takes some practice for players to nail down and do consistently. The failed removal of tap-strafing. Tap-strafing can only realistically be done on the mouse and keyboard, as controllers inherently lack the functionality of repeatedly triggering the move forward key like the mouse scroll wheel. The devs saw this as an unfair advantage, so they announced the removal of tap-strafing in Apex Legends patch 10.1 in 2021. However, this change didn't come to fruition, as the process of removing it could negatively affect the game's other movement mechanics. The devs promised to revisit ways to tone it down in the future. Some avid Apex Legends controller players also tried to execute tap-strafing through dubious means, like using macros, which are scripts that simulate multiple actions within a single button press. Using them can result in a ban if the game detects them. Others use Steam configs to bind movement keys to the joystick and activated the hold to repeat function to execute the action up to 1,000 times upon triggering the forward motion. The devs got on top of this exploit and blocked Steam configs altogether. However, some macros remain undetectable by the game's anti-cheat. The nerfing and unnerfing of tap-strafing. Respawn made good on its 2021 promise in 2025 when it found a way to nerf tap-strafing. It added a buffer to tap-strafes, which resulted in a delay in the player's ability to change directions, and is supposed to combat undetected macros by making the move less rewarding. After some backlash among players, content creators, and pros, however, the game walked back on the change. Tap-strafing's tumultuous history is a significant example of how difficult it is to pin down macro users in the game. It seems hard for any game's anti-cheat to distinguish between the movement of a good player and another that's using macros. This is because some players can do frame-perfect executions on their own and banning them would be outright unfair. Meanwhile, macros can also disguise their presence by making their inputs less perfect. Respawn tried to combat it by nerfing tap-strafing, but this ultimately seemed like a band-aid solution. Respawn Entertainment hopefully finds a more intuitive way to buckle down on macro users without sacrificing the movement techniques that players have come to love.